Captain Rylan Cross adjusted his visor as the Eclipse shuddered slightly, its hull groaning under the strain of navigating through an asteroid field. The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly around him, dotted with chunks of rock that glimmered faintly in the dim light of a distant star. It was supposed to be a routine mission, charting unexplored regions of this sector, but something about today felt off. Raylan leaned back in his pilot's seat, rubbing the stubble on his chin. He had been flying solo for hours now, the silence aboard the small scout ship broken only by the occasional hum of machinery or the crackle of static from the communication console. His eyes flicked over the navigation panel when suddenly a blinking red dot appeared on the radar screen. "What's that?" he muttered, leaning forward. The signal was weak, barely registering above the background noise of cosmic radiation. At first, he thought it might just be interference, but then it repeated, a rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat, a distress call. Not part of the plan, Rylan sighed, tapping a few commands into the console. Protocol dictated ignoring unknown signals unless they originated from human ships, but curiosity got the better of him. Adjusting the ship's trajectory, he steered the Eclipse toward the source of the transmission. As he drew closer, the outline of another vessel came into view, sleek and angular. It looked nothing like any human design he'd ever seen. Its surface shimmered faintly, reflecting the sparse light around them. Whatever it wasn't moving, and judging by the jagged gash along its side, it was badly damaged. Rylan frowned. Looks like someone had a rough day. He activated the external cameras, zooming in on the wreckage. Through the cracks in the hull, he could see strange symbols etched into the interior walls. Alien writing, no doubt. Then, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Someone, or something, was still alive inside. For a moment, Rylan hesitated. Helping aliens was risky business, especially out here where help was nowhere near. Still, he couldn't leave whoever it was to die. Not if he could do something about it. "Guess I'm not getting my coffee break anytime soon," he said aloud, more to fill the silence than anything else. With practiced precision, Rylan maneuvered the Eclipse alongside the alien craft. Using the ship's grappling arm, he secured the two vessels together before donning his suit and stepping into the airlock. As the outer door opened, a rush of cold vacuum greeted him. He floated across the short distance between the ships, attaching magnetic tethers to keep himself anchored. Inside the alien vessel, the atmosphere was thin and tinged with a metallic scent. Rylan activated the helmet lamp, sweeping the beam across the cramped interior. Panels lined the walls, glowing faintly with pulsating lights. Strange instruments hung from the ceiling, their purpose entirely foreign to him. Then he saw her. Slumped against one of the control panels was a figure unlike anything Rylan had ever encountered. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, catching the glow of his lamp. Long, delicate limbs draped limply at her sides, and her hair, dark as midnight, flowed weightlessly in the microgravity. Most striking were her eyes, closed now but framed by intricate patterns tattooed onto her face. "She's beautiful," Rylan whispered, momentarily forgetting himself. Checking his scanner, he confirmed she was alive, though barely. Without hesitation, he scooped her up in his arms, marveling at how light she felt despite her tall frame. She stirred slightly, letting out a soft moan, but didn't wake. "Hold on," he murmured. "You're going to be okay." Getting back to the Eclipse proved trickier than expected. The alien ship groaned ominously as he made his way out, chunks of debris floating loose in the zero-gravity environment. By the time he sealed the airlock behind him, sweat dripped down his brow beneath the helmet. In the medical bay, Rylan laid the mysterious woman onto the diagnostic table. The ship's automated systems scanned her, displaying readings he couldn't fully understand. Whatever species she belonged to, their biology was far beyond human comprehension. Still, the basics seemed clear. She needed rest, fluids, and time to recover. Hours passed before she finally opened her eyes. They were violet, luminous, and impossibly deep, seeming to pierce straight through him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, in a voice melodic yet unfamiliar, she said, "You saved me." Rylan blinked, caught off guard. Yeah. You're welcome." She tilted her head, studying him intently. "I am Leora Venara of the Caliph people." Her tone carried a regal quality, even weakened as she was. "And you are?" "Rylan Cross. Human. Captain of the Eclipse. Nice to meet you, I guess." Leora nodded slowly, as if processing his words. Then, without warning, she reached out and placed a hand on his chest. A surge of warmth spread through him, accompanied by a faint buzzing sensation. Before he could react, she began chanting softly in her native tongue. Glowing symbols appeared in the air between them, swirling like fireflies before coalescing into a shimmering thread that connected their bodies. "What the?" Rylan started, pulling away instinctively, but the thread remained, binding them together. Panic surged within him. "What did you just do?" Leora lowered her hand, looking both apologetic and resolute. "It is done. We are bound by the vow." "The what?" Rylan demanded, his voice rising. "Look, lady, I don't know what kind of alien magic you've got going on here, but I didn't sign up for this." "It is not your choice," Leora replied calmly. "Among my people, those who save our lives are forever tied to us. It is tradition, an unbreakable bond." Rylan stared at her, disbelief warring with frustration. "Unbreakable? You mean we're stuck like this? Forever?" "For now," she admitted. "But there are ways to fulfill the vow, to release us both. Until then," she gestured to the glowing thread linking them, "we must stay close, very close." Rylan groaned, running a hand through his hair. Of all the things he'd expected to happen today, being magically tethered to an alien princess was definitely not one of them. And yet, here he was, his life irrevocably changed in the span of a single encounter. As the reality sank in, Rylan realized two things. First, he was stuck with Leora until they figured out how to undo whatever she'd done. Second, despite everything, there was something undeniably compelling about her, something that made him wonder if maybe, just maybe, this bizarre twist of fate might lead to something greater than either of them could imagine. For now, though, all he could do was take a deep breath and hope for the best. After all, when you're lost among the stars, sometimes the most unexpected alliances turn out to be the ones that matter most. The hum of the Eclipse's engines filled the silence as Rylan paced back and forth in the cramped confines of the ship's main cabin. His eyes darted repeatedly to the shimmering thread that connected him to Leora, who sat calmly on the other side of the room. She seemed unfazed by their predicament, her violet eyes closed as if meditating, or perhaps ignoring his mounting frustration. "This is insane," Rylan muttered under his breath, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. "Absolutely insane." Leora opened one eye and tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "You have said that several times now, Captain Cross. Is there something else troubling you?" "Oh, I don't know," Rylan snapped, gesturing wildly at the glowing tether between them. "Maybe it's the fact that I'm literally tied to an alien I just met, with no way to get rid of it. Or maybe it's that your tradition has completely upended my life without even asking me first." Leora raised an eyebrow, unbothered by his outburst. "Among my people, the vow is considered sacred. It is not taken lightly, not by those who give it, nor by those who receive it." "Well, forgive me if I'm not exactly thrilled about being dragged into some cosmic ritual," Rylan shot back. "Do you have any idea what this means for me? I can't just go about my business anymore. I can't leave the ship without you tagging along like some kind of shadow." Leora stood gracefully, her movements fluid and deliberate. "And yet here we are," she said simply, "bound together until the vow is fulfilled." Rylan groaned, throwing up his hands in exasperation. "Great, just great. So what happens now? Do I sit around waiting for instructions, Or do you expect me to drop everything and follow you wherever you want to go?" Her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "For someone so resistant to change, you seem remarkably eager to find solutions." "That's because I don't have a choice," he retorted. "Look, I saved your life. That should have been the end of it. Instead, I'm stuck playing babysitter to an alien princess who thinks traditions trump common sense." Lyora's smile faded, replaced by a look of quiet determination. "You misunderstand, Captain. This bond is not merely a burden, it is also a gift. Among the Caliph, such ties are seen as opportunities for growth, for understanding beyond oneself. Perhaps in time, you will come to see it that way too." Ryland snorted. "Yeah, right. Until then, I guess I'm stuck babysitting." As the days passed, tensions aboard the Eclipse remained high. Ryland tried to focus on repairs, charting courses, and keeping the ship operational, but the constant presence of the glowing thread, and Leora herself, made concentration nearly impossible. Every step he took was mirrored by her, every decision complicated by the need to account for her proximity. To make matters worse, the Eclipse had sustained damage during the rescue mission. A jagged crack in the hull leaked precious oxygen, forcing Ryland to ration supplies while he worked tirelessly to patch the breach. With each passing hour, the strain wore on him, both physically and mentally. Meanwhile, Leora spent much of her time observing him, studying the ship's systems, and occasionally offering cryptic advice. When Ryland finally snapped at her for standing too close while he worked, she simply replied, "I cannot help where I must be." Frustrated but unwilling to argue further, Ryland decided to focus on gathering information instead. If he couldn't break free of the vow immediately, he reasoned, he might as well learn more about the person responsible for his predicament. "All right," he said one evening, plopping down across from her in the galley. "Tell me about yourself. Who are you really? And why were you out there alone?" Leora hesitated, her gaze drifting toward the viewport where stars streaked past in long trails of light. For a moment, Ryland thought she wouldn't answer. Then softly, she began to speak. "I am the last of my line," she said. "Once, my family held great influence among the Caliph. We were advisors to the Council of Elders, guardians of ancient knowledge. But that was before." She trailed off, her voice tinged with sadness. "Before what?" Ryland prompted. "Before the rebellion," she continued after a pause. "My father led a faction seeking reform, a fairer society, free from the tyranny of our rulers. But the uprising failed. Many died, including my parents. Those who survived were exiled, or worse." Ryland frowned, leaning forward. "So you're a fugitive." "In a manner of speaking," she admitted. "I fled to avoid capture, hoping to rebuild what was lost. That is why I was traveling alone when you found me." He studied her face, noting the pain hidden behind her composed demeanor. Despite his initial resentment, he couldn't deny the courage it must have taken to endure such loss and keep moving forward. "And now," he asked, "what happens if whoever's chasing you finds us?" Leora met his gaze steadily. "Then we fight. Together." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Ryland wanted to protest, to remind her that he hadn't signed up for any of this. But deep down, he knew she was right. Whether he liked it or not, they were bound, not just by the vow, but by circumstance. Their uneasy alliance grew stronger as they navigated the challenges ahead. One night, while repairing a malfunctioning sensor array, Ryland accidentally triggered an alarm that flooded the ship with blinding light. Instinctively, Leora grabbed his arm and pulled him toward cover, shielding him from potential danger. As the alert subsided, Ryland realized how close they were standing, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "You didn't have to do that," he said gruffly, stepping back. "It is part of the bond," she replied, her tone matter-of-fact. "We protect each other, whether we wish to or not." Ryland sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "This whole thing still feels Wrong. Like I'm losing control of my own life. Leora regarded him thoughtfully. Perhaps control is overrated. Sometimes, the most meaningful journeys begin with letting go. Her words lingered in his mind long after the conversation ended. Though he refused to admit it aloud, Ryland found himself starting to appreciate her perspective. There was wisdom in her calm demeanor, strength in her resilience, and though he hated to admit it, her presence, even the infuriating parts, was beginning to feel less like a burden and more like companionship. By the time the eclipse limped into orbit around a distant moon, Ryland had accepted, at least temporarily, that escape wasn't an option. The ship's systems were failing faster than he could fix them, leaving him no choice but to seek help elsewhere. "Where are we headed?" he asked, glancing at Leora as she reviewed the star charts. "To Silveris," she replied, "a Caliph colony near the edge of our territory. They may be able to assist us." Ryland arched an eyebrow. "And they won't try to arrest you, or me, for breaking whatever alien laws we've stumbled into." "They may question us," Leora admitted, "but the vow grants us certain protections. No Caliph would dare harm one bound by tradition." "Comforting," Ryland muttered sarcastically. Despite his skepticism, he couldn't deny the flicker of hope that sparked within him. Maybe, just maybe, they'd find a way to undo the vow once they reached Silveris. Until then, all he could do was trust Leora and hope for the best. As the eclipse descended toward the planet below, Ryland glanced at the glowing thread connecting them. For the first time since their fateful encounter, he wondered if perhaps fate had brought them together for a reason. Whatever Eid, one thing was certain: their journey was far from over. The descent toward Silveris was anything but smooth. The eclipse shuddered violently as it pierced through the planet's thick atmosphere, its damaged hull groaning under the strain. Ryland gripped the controls tightly, beads of sweat forming on his forehead as he fought to keep the ship steady. Beside him, or rather, tethered by the glowing thread, Leora remained calm, her violet eyes fixed on the view screen. "Hold on," Ryland shouted over the roar of turbulence. "We're coming in hot." Leora didn't flinch. Instead, she placed a hand gently on his arm, her touch oddly soothing despite their chaotic situation. "Trust the ship," she said softly. "It will carry us safely." Ryland wanted to argue. After all, the eclipse was barely holding together, but something about her unwavering confidence made him bite back his retort. Maybe she knew something he didn't, or maybe she was just better at staying composed under pressure. With a final jolt, the ship broke through the clouded layer and emerged into clearer skies. Below them stretched a breathtaking landscape, sprawling cities carved into crystalline mountains, their surfaces shimmering like diamonds under twin suns. Rivers of liquid light wound through valleys, while towering spires reached skyward, pulsating faintly with energy. It looked like something out of a dream, or perhaps a nightmare, given how unpredictable this journey had been so far. "At Silveris?" Ryland asked, his voice tinged with awe. "Yes," Leora replied. "My people call it the Cradle of Stars. Once, it was a sanctuary for those seeking peace. Now," she trailed off, her expression darkening slightly, "now it is divided, much like the rest of my kind." Before Ryland could press her for more details, an automated voice crackled over the comms system. "Unidentified vessel, you are entering restricted airspace. State your purpose or prepare to be intercepted." Ryland glanced at Leora, who nodded reassuringly. Taking a deep breath, he activated the comm. "This is Captain Ryland Cross of the human scout ship Eclipse. I'm accompanied by Leora Venera of the Caliph people. We request permission to land for repairs and assistance." There was a long pause before the response came. "Acknowledged, Captain Cross. Proceed to docking Bay Delta 7. A representative will meet you upon arrival." As the transmission ended, Ryland let out a sigh of relief. Well, that went better than expected. "For now," Leora added cautiously, "but be prepared. Not everyone here will welcome us." When they landed, the docking bay was eerily quiet. The airlock hissed open, revealing a group of Caliph waiting outside. Their appearances varied subtly from Leora's. Some had golden skin instead of silver, others bore intricate markings across their faces, but all shared the same ethereal beauty. They regarded the newcomers with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. One figure stepped forward, a tall male with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. He wore elaborate robes adorned with glowing runes, marking him as someone of importance. "Leora Venara," he said, his voice carrying a tone of authority. "You have returned." Leora inclined her head respectfully. "Counselor Irindur, it has been many cycles." Irindur's gaze shifted to Rylan, lingering on the glowing thread connecting him to Leora. His expression hardened. "And who is this? Human?" "This is Captain Rylan Cross," Leora explained. "He saved my life, and is bound to me by the vow." Murmurs rippled through the assembled Caliph. Some looked intrigued, others disapproving. Irindur himself seemed conflicted, his brow furrowing as he studied the pair. "The vow is sacred," he said finally. "Yet it is rare for one such as yourself to form such a bond with an outsider. Tell me, Captain Cross, do you understand what this means?" Rylan hesitated, unsure how to respond. He glanced at Leora, who gave him an encouraging nod. "I'm still figuring that out," he admitted. "But I didn't exactly get a choice in the matter." Irindur's lips twitched into a faint smile. "No, I suppose you did not. Very well. You may stay for now. But know this, the council will wish to speak with both of you." With that, he turned and gestured for them to follow. As they walked through the crystalline corridors of Silveris, Rylan couldn't help but marvel at the architecture. The walls pulsed with soft light, casting ever-shifting patterns on the floor. Strange symbols floated in the air, humming faintly as if alive. Despite its beauty, however, there was an underlying tension, a sense that not everything here was as harmonious as it appeared. Later that evening, during a private moment in their assigned quarters, Rylan finally voiced the question that had been gnawing at him since their arrival. "What's really going on here, Leora? Why does everyone seem so tense?" Leora sighed, sitting down on the edge of a sleek, translucent bench. "Silveris is divided. Many believe we should isolate ourselves from outsiders, fearing contamination of our culture and traditions. Others, like my family once did, seek unity with other species. These factions have clashed for generations, and tensions are high." "And where do you stand?" Rylan asked. Her gaze softened. "I believe in connection, in learning from one another, but not everyone shares that view." Just then, the door slid open, revealing a young Caliph woman with fiery orange hair and piercing green eyes. She carried herself with an air of defiance, her stance challenging, as she locked eyes with Leora. Well, well," she sneered. "Look who decided to slink back home after abandoning us." Leora stood, her expression guarded. "Kalira, I see you've grown bolder since last we met." Kalira smirked. "Someone had to fill the void your family left behind. Tell me, Leora, what brings you back now? Surely not nostalgia." "It's none of your concern," Leora replied evenly. "Oh, but it is," Kalira countered, "especially when you bring a human pet along for the ride." Her gaze flicked dismissively to Rylan. "Do you think he'll protect you when Thaurik comes for you?" Rylan stiffened. "Who's Thaurik?" Lyra's jaw tightened. "An old enemy, one who won't hesitate to use force to achieve his goals." Kalira laughed bitterly. "Enjoy your reunion, cousin. Just don't expect anyone here to shed tears when it all falls apart again." With that, she turned and strode away, leaving an uneasy silence in her wake. Over the next few days, Rylan learned more about the political turmoil plaguing Silveris. Through snippets of conversation and careful observation, he pieced together the story. Years ago, Leora's father had led a rebellion against Thaurik, a ruthless warlord who sought to consolidate power among the Caliph. Though the uprising failed, Thauric's hatred for the Venera family endured. Now, with Leora's return, old wounds were reopening, and Rylan found himself caught in the crossfire. One night, unable to sleep, Rylan wandered into the central chamber of their quarters. To his surprise, he found Leora standing there, bathed in the glow of floating symbols. She turned as he approached, her expression unreadable. "You should rest," she said quietly. "So should you," he replied. "But I can't stop thinking about what Kalira said. About Thauric." Leora hesitated, then nodded. "He is dangerous, more so than you realize. If he learns of our presence here, he'll come after you." Rylan finished for her. "And me too, thanks to this stupid vow." She stepped closer, her gaze intense. "I never intended to put you in harm's way, Rylan. But now that we are bound, we must face whatever comes next, together." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, almost instinctively, Rylan reached out and took her hand. The glowing thread between them brightened slightly, as if responding to their unspoken resolve. "All right," he said firmly. "Let's figure this out, together." As dawn broke over Silverus, casting its shimmering light across the horizon, Rylan felt a strange sense of determination settle over him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't facing them alone. The following morning brought with it a sense of foreboding that neither Rylan nor Leora could shake. As sunlight filtered through the crystalline windows of their quarters, painting the walls with shifting hues of blue and gold, they prepared for their inevitable meeting with the Council of Elders. The air was thick with tension, and though neither spoke openly about it, both knew that this audience would determine not only their immediate future, but perhaps the fate of their bond as well. Rylan adjusted the collar of his uniform, feeling out of place among the ethereal elegance of the Caliph architecture. Beside him, Leora moved with quiet grace, her silver skin catching the light in a way that made her seem almost otherworldly. Despite everything, Rylan couldn't help but admire her composure, even if he didn't fully understand it. "Ready?" she asked, turning to face him. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, forcing a smile. "Let's just hope these elders are more reasonable than some of the others we've met so far." Leora gave him a small, reassuring nod before leading the way toward the council chamber. The corridors were bustling with activity now, Caliph citizens going about their daily routines. Some glanced curiously at the human tethered to one of their own, while others whispered behind raised hands. Rylan tried to ignore the stares, focusing instead on keeping pace with Leora. Still, the weight of the glowing thread between them served as a constant reminder of how unusual and precarious their situation truly was. The council chamber was unlike anything Rylan had ever seen. A vast dome-shaped room filled with floating platforms arranged in concentric circles, each occupied by a member of the Council of Elders. The elders themselves radiated an aura of wisdom and authority, their appearances varying widely, from those whose features resembled Leora's shimmering beauty to others whose forms seemed almost translucent, as if they existed partially beyond the physical realm. At the center of the chamber stood a raised dais, where Rylan and Leora were instructed to wait. As they approached, all eyes turned to them, and the hum of conversation fell silent. For a moment, Rylan felt like an insect under a microscope, scrutinized and judged without mercy. Leora Venara intoned a deep, resonant voice from above. Rylan looked up to see a towering figure descending onto the dais, a male elder with luminous white hair and eyes that glowed faintly. His presence commanded respect, even from someone unfamiliar with Caliph customs. "Elder Valerian," Leora greeted him with a bow. "It is an honor to stand before you once more." Valerian studied her for a long moment before speaking again. "You have returned to Silverus after many cycles of absence, bound to a human no less. Explain yourself." All eyes shifted to Rylan, who swallowed hard. This wasn't exactly the warm welcome he'd hoped for. Taking a step forward, Leora began her explanation. I was adrift in space when Captain Rylan Cross discovered me and saved my life. By our traditions, the vow was invoked, binding us together until its fulfillment. I seek guidance on how best to resolve this matter." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, and several elders exchanged concerned glances. One particularly stern-looking female elder leaned forward, her expression severe. "The vow is sacred, yes, but rarely does it extend to outsiders. What makes this human worthy of such a bond?" Before Rylan could respond, Leora interjected. "He acted selflessly, risking his life to save mine despite knowing nothing of me or my people. That alone proves his worthiness." The female elder frowned. "Worthiness is not enough. The bond carries risks, for both parties and for our society as a whole. Humans are unpredictable, driven by emotions rather than logic. How can we trust that this union will not disrupt the fragile balance we strive to maintain?" Rylan clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He hated being talked about as if he weren't standing right there. "With all due respect," he said, stepping forward despite the disapproving looks aimed his way, "I may not understand your traditions, but I'm not here to cause trouble. All I want is to find a way to undo whatever this connection is." "And yet," Valerian countered, his tone measured but firm, "the vow cannot simply be undone. It exists to serve a purpose, to unite two souls in shared destiny. To sever it prematurely would bring consequences neither of you are prepared for." Leora placed a calming hand on Rylan's arm, silently urging him to stay composed. Turning back to the council, she addressed them directly. "Then tell us what must be done. If fulfilling the vow requires action, name it. We will do what is necessary." Another elder, this one with shimmering green markings etched across her face, rose slowly. "Fulfillment of the vow demands sacrifice. One party must perform a sacred duty for the other. Only then can the bond be dissolved naturally." "A sacred duty," Rylan echoed, confused. "What does that mean exactly?" "It varies depending on circumstances," the elder explained. "For some, it may involve protecting their bonded companion at great personal cost. For others, it might require completing a task deemed impossible." "Great, just great." Rylan pinched the bridge of his nose, already dreading whatever absurd challenge lay ahead. But before he could protest further, Valerian spoke again. "There is another matter to consider," he said gravely. "Your return coincides with troubling rumors of unrest within our borders. Thalric has been rallying support against those who advocate unity with outsiders. Your presence here, bound to a human, risks reigniting old conflicts." Leora stiffened visibly, her calm exterior cracking for the first time. "I came seeking refuge, not conflict. My family's past mistakes should not dictate my future, or theirs." Valerian regarded her thoughtfully. "Intentions matter little when actions speak louder. Be warned, Leora. Thalric will not hesitate to exploit your bond with this human to further his agenda." As the gravity of the situation settled over them, Rylan realized they were walking a tightrope. On one side lay the possibility of unraveling the vow and regaining his freedom. On the other, the looming threat of political chaos and violence. Neither option sounded particularly appealing. After what felt like hours of deliberation, the council finally reached a decision. They would allow Rylan and Leora to remain in Silverus temporarily, long enough to explore potential solutions to their predicament. However, they were forbidden from leaving the colony without explicit permission, and any interaction with outsiders would be closely monitored. As they exited the council chamber, Rylan exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the elder's words pressing down on him. "Well, that went better than I expected," he muttered sarcastically. "It could have been worse," Leora admitted, "but we must tread carefully, trust few, and keep our intentions hidden." Rylan nodded grimly. "Got it. No heroics, no grand gestures, just survival." For the next several days, they navigated the delicate social landscape of Silverus, gathering information and avoiding drawing unnecessary attention. During this time, Rylan began noticing subtle changes within himself. Occasionally, when danger loomed or adrenaline surged, he found himself accessing abilities he didn't fully understand. Heightened reflexes, bursts of strength, even fleeting moments of telekinesis. Each use left him drained, but also increasingly dependent on Leora's guidance to manage the effects. One evening, as they sat together in their quarters reviewing star charts, Rylan broached a question that had been nagging at him. "Why did you really come back here, Leora?" he asked quietly. "Was it just a high from Thaurik, or is there something else?" She hesitated, her violet eyes clouded with conflicting emotions. Finally, she sighed. "I came seeking allies, to reclaim my family's honor and restore the ideals they fought for. But now," she glanced at the glowing thread connecting them, "now I wonder if perhaps the vow itself is meant to guide me toward a greater purpose." Rylan studied her for a long moment, seeing the vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. Whatever doubts he still harbored about their bond, he couldn't deny the courage it took for her to face her past head-on. "Well," he said with a wry smile, "if we're stuck together, we might as well make the most of it." Her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "Agreed." As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting Silveris in a soft twilight glow, Rylan felt a flicker of determination ignite within him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain: he wouldn't face them alone. As the days passed, Rylan and Leora grew increasingly aware that their presence in Silveris was stirring unrest. Whispers of their arrival spread like wildfire through the colony, igniting debates among the Caliph populace. Some viewed the vow as a sign of hope, a bridge between species and proof that unity was possible. Others saw it as an affront to tradition, a dangerous precedent set by someone who had once been part of a rebellious faction. Rylan noticed the change almost immediately. The curious glances and murmured conversations gave way to outright hostility. In the marketplace, vendors refused to serve him, muttering under their breath about human contamination. Even within the crystalline corridors of the council chambers, where they were supposed to find refuge, cold stares followed them everywhere. "Things are getting worse," Rylan said one evening as they returned to their quarters. His voice carried a note of frustration and fear. "People here don't trust us. They barely tolerate you." Leora nodded solemnly. "Fear breeds hatred, Captain Cross. Many see me as a reminder of what they lost, or what they fear losing." Rylan stopped walking, turning to face her. "And what about Thaurik? When is he going to show his face?" "He will come," Leora replied quietly. "Patience is not his strength, but strategy is. He'll wait until the time is right, until we're most vulnerable." The thought sent a chill down Rylan's spine. He hated waiting, hated feeling powerless while some unseen enemy plotted against them. But there was little they could do except prepare for whatever storm approached. Their opportunity came sooner than expected. It began with a message delivered to their quarters late at night. A young Caliph messenger arrived, breathless and wide-eyed, clutching a glowing orb that pulsed faintly with light. "From Counselor Irinder," she stammered, bowing quickly before disappearing into the shadows. Rylan frowned as Leora took the orb and activated it. A holographic projection of Irinder appeared, his expression grave. "Leora, Captain Cross, I bring urgent news. Thaurik has gathered forces outside the city walls. He plans to seize control of the archives beneath Silveris, where ancient relics hold immense power. If he succeeds..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Both Rylan and Leora understood the implications. The archives weren't just repositories of knowledge. They were sacred sites containing artifacts capable of altering reality itself. The wrong hands, they could destabilize entire regions of space. "We must stop him," Leora declared firmly. Irinder hesitated. "You understand the risks. This mission is perilous, and failure means certain death for both of you." "We don't have a choice," Rylan interjected. "If Thaurik gets those artifacts, no one will be safe. Not humans, not Caliph, nobody." The projection flickered and vanished, leaving them alone in the dim light of their quarters. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Leora turned to Rylan, her violet eyes blazing with resolve. "This is our chance to fulfill the vow," she said, "to protect each other, and perhaps Silveris itself." Rylan let out a slow breath. "All right, let's do this." The journey to the archives took them deep underground, through labyrinthine tunnels carved directly into the crystalline mountain. The air grew colder and thinner the deeper they ventured, and the faint hum of energy emanating from the walls hinted at the relic's immense power. Every step felt heavier, not just because of the oppressive atmosphere, but also because of the knowledge that Thalric's forces were likely already inside. "I've been here before," Leora whispered as they reached a massive stone door etched with glowing runes. "These symbols ward off intruders. Only those of pure intent can pass." "And how exactly does that work?" Rylan asked, eyeing the door warily. "You'll see," she replied cryptically, stepping forward and placing her hand on the surface. The rooms flared brightly, bathing her in golden light. After a moment, the door groaned open, revealing a cavernous chamber filled with towering shelves stacked high with glowing artifacts. Rylan stared in awe. "This looks like something out of a dream, or a nightmare." Before they could move further, a low chuckle echoed through the chamber. From the shadows emerged Thalric, flanked by a group of heavily armed Calath warriors. Unlike the others they'd encountered, Thalric exuded menace. His dark armor shimmered with embedded crystals, and his piercing red eyes seemed to burn with malice. "So," he sneered, striding toward them, "the prodigal daughter returns, with a human pet in tow. How fitting." Leora stepped forward, shielding Rylan slightly. "Thalric, leave this place. You cannot claim these relics without consequence." "Oh, I think I can," he countered, raising a hand. At his command, the warriors advanced, weapons drawn. "Your little human won't last long against my soldiers. Surrender now, and I might spare your life." Rylan clenched his fists, adrenaline surging through him. Though outnumbered, he wasn't about to give up without a fight. Beside him, Leora radiated calm determination, her presence grounding him even as chaos loomed. "Stay close," she murmured. "Remember what I taught you." With that, the battle began. The skirmish was intense and chaotic. Rylan relied on the abilities granted by the vow, dodging blows and countering attacks with newfound agility. Each burst of telekinetic force drained him, but the connection to Leora fueled his strength, keeping him upright even as fatigue threatened to overwhelm him. Meanwhile, Leora moved like a dancer amidst the chaos, her movements precise and lethal. With a wave of her hand, she summoned barriers of shimmering energy to deflect incoming projectiles. When cornered, she unleashed pulses of light that sent enemies sprawling. Despite their efforts, however, Thalric proved a formidable opponent. His combat skills were unmatched, and his armor absorbed most of their attacks. As the fight dragged on, Rylan realized they couldn't win through brute force alone. "We need to get to the core," Leora shouted over the din. "Destroy the central artifact. It'll disable the others." Nodding, Rylan focused all his remaining energy on reaching the heart of the chamber. Together, they fought their way past Thalric's guards, inching closer to the pulsating crystal at the center of the room. Just as they reached it, Thalric lunged at them, his blade slicing through the air mere inches from Rylan's chest. Leora reacted instantly, shoving Rylan aside and taking the brunt of the blow herself. She collapsed to the ground, clutching her side, as blood seeped through her fingers. "No," Rylan cried, kneeling beside her. "Leora." Her voice was weak but steady. "Finish what we started." Summoning every ounce of strength, Rylan turned to face Thalric. The tether between them glowed brighter than ever, channeling Leora's energy into him. With a roar, he charged forward, using the last of his borrowed powers to disarm Thalric and smash the central artifact. A blinding flash of light engulfed the chamber, sending shockwaves rippling outward. When the dust settled, Thalric lay unconscious, his forces scattered. The artifacts had been neutralized, their glow extinguished. Breathing heavily, Rylan knelt beside Leora, cradling her in his arms. Tears streamed down his face as he pressed his hand to her wound, willing her to stay awake. "You saved me again," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Just like before." "Don't talk," he choked out. "We're getting you help." But Leora shook her head faintly. "The vow, it binds us still. Fulfillment requires sacrifice." Her words trailed off as her body went limp in his arms. For a moment, Rylan feared the worst. But then, a soft warmth spread through the glowing thread connecting them. The bond pulsed with renewed energy, stabilizing her condition. Exhausted but relieved, Rylan held her close, vowing silently never to let her go. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The aftermath of the battle left Rylan and Leora battered but alive. The central artifact's destruction had neutralized Thalric's plans, scattering his forces and leaving him unconscious in the chamber. As the dust settled, the glowing thread binding them pulsed faintly, its light dimmer than before, but still unbroken. Leora stirred weakly in Rylan's arms, her breathing shallow but steady. "We need to get out of here," Rylan said urgently, lifting her gently. "Can you walk?" Leora nodded, though her movements were slow and pained. She leaned heavily on him as they made their way back through the tunnels, retracing their steps toward the surface. Each step felt like an eternity, the weight of exhaustion pressing down on both of them. Yet despite everything, there was a quiet determination in their shared silence, a resolve forged in fire and tempered by trust. When they finally emerged from the underground archives, dawn was breaking over Silveris. Twin suns cast golden light across the crystalline city, bathing it in warmth and hope. Counselor Erindor awaited them at the entrance, his expression a mix of relief and concern. "You succeeded," he said simply, stepping forward to help support Leora. "The colony owes you a great debt." Rylan shook his head, his voice hoarse from fatigue. "We didn't do it for gratitude. We did it because it was the right thing." Erindor studied him for a moment, then nodded approvingly. "Perhaps that is why the vow chose you." Back in their quarters, Leora rested while healers tended to her wounds. Though she insisted she would recover fully, Rylan couldn't shake the fear that lingered in the back of his mind. He replayed the events of the night over and over again. The way she had pushed him aside to take the blow meant for him, the way she had whispered about sacrifice before collapsing into his arms. "Why does it feel like we're running out of time?" he muttered aloud, pacing the room restlessly. Leora opened her eyes, watching him with a calm intensity. "Because we are." Her words stopped him in his tracks. "What do you mean?" She sat up slowly, wincing slightly as she adjusted her position. "The vow is not just a bond. It's a cycle. It connects us, yes, but it also demands completion. Until now, we've been fighting against it, resisting its purpose. But perhaps it's time to embrace it." Rylan frowned, sinking onto the edge of the bed beside her. "Embrace it how?" "By giving up. By letting one of us die to break the bond." "No," Leora replied softly. "By understanding what the bond truly means. Sacrifice doesn't always mean loss. Sometimes it means choosing something greater than yourself, even if it scares you." Her gaze locked with his, unwavering and full of meaning. For the first time, Rylan realized she wasn't talking about physical death. She was talking about surrendering control, about trusting fate, or whatever cosmic force had brought them together, to guide them forward. Before he could respond, a soft chime echoed through the room. The glowing thread between them shimmered brightly, drawing their attention. Symbols began to form in the air around them, swirling like fireflies before coalescing into a single intricate pattern. It hovered above their heads, pulsating with energy. "What is that?" Rylan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's a message," Leora explained, her tone reverent. from the vow itself. As they watched, the pattern expanded, projecting images into the space around them. Scenes unfolded before their eyes, visions of distant galaxies, ancient civilizations, and moments of connection between species that seemed impossible yet undeniable. Among these visions, Ryland saw glimpses of himself and Leora, standing side by side on alien worlds, working together to bridge divides, protecting others from threats far greater than Thauric. "These are possibilities," Leora murmured. "Paths we could take if we choose to fulfill the vow, not just for ourselves, but for everyone." Ryland stared at the images, overwhelmed by their scope and beauty. "You're saying this bond isn't just about us anymore." "No," she agreed. "It never was. The vow exists to unite beings destined to change the galaxy, to create harmony where there is chaos. But fulfilling it requires more than survival. It requires faith." Faith. The word resonated deeply within him. Faith in her, in himself, in the strange and unpredictable journey they'd been thrust into. Slowly, he reached out and took her hand, feeling the warmth of the glowing thread pulse beneath their touch. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "I don't know what happens next, but if you believe in this, if you think it's worth it, I'll follow you anywhere." A small tender smile spread across Leora's face. "Then let's finish what we started." The next morning, they stood together in the council chamber once more, surrounded by the elders who had judged them so harshly before. This time, however, the atmosphere was different. Word of their victory over Thauric had spread, earning them a measure of respect, even admiration, from those who had doubted them. Valerian stepped forward, his glowing eyes filled with curiosity. "You have done what many believed impossible. What will you do now?" Ryland glanced at Leora, who gave him an encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, he addressed the council. "We came here seeking answers, to undo the bond that ties us together. But now we understand that the vow isn't something to be broken. It's something to be embraced." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, and several elders exchanged surprised glances. Valerian raised a hand to silence them, his expression thoughtful. "And what does embracing the vow entail?" "It means accepting our roles, not just as individuals, but as part of something larger," Leora explained. "We will continue to protect and learn from each other, using the bond to build bridges between our people. And when the time comes, we will fulfill the vow in its entirety, not through separation, but through unity." The female elder who had questioned Ryland's worthiness earlier leaned forward, her skepticism softened. "Such a path is fraught with challenges. Are you prepared for what lies ahead?" Ryland tightened his grip on Leora's hand, his resolve unwavering. "We are." For a long moment, the council was silent. Then, Valerian spoke, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Very well. Let it be known that Leora Venera and Captain Ryland Cross have chosen to honor the vow in its truest form. May your journey bring peace to all who follow." Later that evening, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the city, Ryland felt a sense of clarity wash over him. The glowing thread between them shimmered softly in the twilight, its light steady and reassuring. "So," he said, turning to Leora with a grin, "where to next?" She smiled, her violet eyes reflecting the twin suns setting on the horizon. "To the stars, Captain Cross. Together." And as they gazed out at the vast expanse of space, stretching endlessly before them, Ryland knew one thing for certain. No matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side. The days following their decision to embrace the vow passed in a blur of preparation and reflection. Ryland and Leora spent hours poring over star charts, planning their next destination. Silverus had become a temporary sanctuary, but neither felt ready to linger too long. The bond between them pulsed with renewed energy, as if urging them onward, to explore, to connect, to fulfill the greater purpose hinted at by the visions they'd seen. As they finalized their plans, the people of Silverus began to take notice, word of their courage, and their willingness to honor the vow. spread quickly, earning them not only respect, but also hope. Many Caliph saw their partnership as a symbol of unity, proof that differences could be bridged and alliances forged across species. Even those who had once opposed their presence now regarded them with cautious admiration. On their final day in the colony, Councillor Arindor summoned them to the council chamber one last time. When they arrived, they found the room filled not just with elders, but also with citizens who had gathered to witness their departure. Valerian stood at the center of the dais, his glowing white hair catching the light as he addressed the crowd. Leora Venera and Captain Rylan Cross have chosen a path few would dare to walk, he declared, his voice resonating through the chamber. They have shown us that tradition need not divide, that bonds formed in trust and sacrifice can lead to something greater than ourselves. A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience, and several Caliph stepped forward to offer gifts. Maps etched on crystalline tablets, relics imbued with protective energies, and tokens meant to guide them safely roughed the stars. Each gift carried a piece of Silverus' spirit, a reminder of the home they were leaving behind. When the ceremony concluded, Arindor approached them personally, his expression solemn yet warm. "Your journey will not be easy," he said. "But know this, you carry the hopes of many with you. May your path bring light to the darkest corners of the galaxy." Rylan nodded, feeling the weight of those words settle over him. "Thank you for everything." Arindor placed a hand on his shoulder briefly before turning to Leora. "And you, Leora, you have reclaimed your family's legacy without dishonor. Go forth with pride." Leora bowed her head in gratitude, her violet eyes shining with emotion. "I will not forget what I've learned here, or who I am because of it." The Eclipse hummed softly as they prepared for liftoff, its systems fully repaired thanks to the skilled engineers of Silverus. As they boarded the ship, Rylan paused at the airlock, glancing back at the crystalline spires glittering under the twin suns. For all its challenges, Silverus had given them more than answers. It had given them direction. "You ready?" Leora asked, standing beside him. He turned to her, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "As ready as I'll ever be." With that, they stepped aboard and sealed the airlock behind them. Moments later, the ship ascended into the sky, leaving the colony far below. As the vastness of space stretched out before them, Rylan settled into the pilot's seat, adjusting the controls with practiced ease. "So," he said, glancing at the glowing thread connecting them, "where exactly are we headed?" Leora leaned over the navigation panel, tracing a route across the star chart. "There's an uncharted sector near the edge of known space, a region rich with anomalies and untold mysteries. If we're going to build bridges between species, we should start where no one else dares to go." Rylan arched an eyebrow. "Sounds dangerous." "It is," she admitted, her tone matter-of-fact. "But isn't that why we're here, to face the unknown together?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "You really know how to sell these ideas." Despite his sarcasm, there was no denying the excitement coursing through him. For so long, he'd lived by routine, charting safe courses and avoiding risks. Now, every jump into hyperspace felt like stepping into the pages of a story waiting to be written. One where humans and aliens worked side by side, forging connections that transcended borders and beliefs. Their first stop took them to a derelict space station orbiting a dying star. Once a hub of trade and diplomacy, it had fallen into disrepair after being abandoned decades earlier. As they explored its crumbling corridors, they discovered remnants of ancient technology, devices capable of translating languages and fostering understanding between species. Though the station itself was beyond saving, the artifacts they recovered would prove invaluable on their journey. From there, they ventured to a remote planet inhabited by a nomadic species known as the Jaren. These beings, composed entirely of shifting energy, communicated through patterns of light and sound. At first, the Jaren were wary of outsiders, especially ones bound by such an unusual connection. But when Rylan used the abilities granted by the vow to mimic their luminous signals, They welcomed him and Leora with open arms, or rather, open waves of radiant energy. They see the bond as sacred, Leora explained later, as they shared a meal beneath the planet's shimmering auroras. To them, it's proof that life forms can transcend physical limitations. Ryland smiled, watching the Jaren dance across the horizon like living constellations. Guess we're making progress. As weeks turned into months, their reputation grew. Stories of the human captain and the Caliph woman bound by destiny spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring others to seek common ground despite their differences. Along the way, they encountered challenges that tested their resolve: hostile scavengers, treacherous terrain, and moments of doubt. But each obstacle only strengthened their bond. One night, as they drifted through the void between stars, Ryland found himself reflecting on how far they'd come. The glowing thread between them still shimmered faintly, a constant reminder of the journey they'd embarked upon together. He glanced at Leora, who sat cross-legged on the floor of the observation deck, gazing out at the endless expanse of space. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, joining her. She tilted her head slightly, her violet eyes thoughtful. "About how small we are, and how big our choices can be. Every action we take ripples outward, shaping the future in ways we may never fully understand." Ryland nodded slowly, his gaze drifting to the stars. "Kind of makes you wonder what's out there, doesn't it? What else we might find or create."